This Three Beards Media podcast is sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company. When Rob and Chrissy Taylor started following the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 2012, they fell in love with not only bourbon, but the entire distilling process. Just 8 short years later, in 2020, Revelton Distilling Company was opened, offering an entire family of products including vodka, gin, whiskey, and Revelton Shine. Come visit the tasting room at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, where you can sample one of their many spirits, including 4 gold medal winners. Can't make it to Osceola today? Not a problem, as you can pick some up at your local Hy-Vee or Fairway grocery stores. Follow Revelton Distilling on Twitter or Instagram at ReveltonDC or their website www.reveltondistilling.com.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts? Hello and welcome back to yet again another edition of Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media, brought to you by Revelton Distilling Company and broadcasting live from the Betfred Sportsbook Studios. I am Tim Johnson, joined as always by Chris Shipley. Chris, how are we doing this evening?
We're doing all right. I'm crossing my fingers that my internet's going to hold. It kind of glitched a couple times there.
Okay, well that's good. That's not good in any way, shape, or form. But we will hope that it holds out.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, it's been probably a little while, listeners, since you have been with us. We have had a lot of life going on, so things have gotten a little bit delayed. I recently purchased a new home and have been trying to do a whole lot of updates before I move in, and now the timeline is condensing very quickly on me, and I'm finding myself making a lot of shortcuts that I don't necessarily want to make, but I'm having to make. So it's been fun.
So you're not moved in yet? I thought you were moved in.
No, I have, I have utilities set up and things like that set up, and I have some things moved in, but we are not fully living there yet. I'm hoping next weekend we get to the 90% range.
Okay.
It's a very small house, and so while you would say, oh, it's easy, like you just downsize and you get rid of all that stuff, what you quickly find is it actually requires a lot more of like deliberate thought on how you do things, and so it requires a lot more work to make things multifunctional.
You're better than I am. I just move in and then dig myself out.
I don't think I could possibly do that. I'm trying to make sure my daughter's room is as like buttoned up as possible, and then we will figure out the rest from there.
That makes sense.
So
yep.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
How about you?
Welcome to-
Well, thank you. How have you been? What's new with you?
We are gearing up to go on vacation. We're leaving next Saturday. We're going to go down to Arkansas to Hot Springs for a couple days, and then stay on the Gulf at Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, for the rest of the week, and then drive home. So, taking Caitlin and her boyfriend and the boys. So, 9 hours in the car the first day. So if you've ever seen the movie of Vacation, I'm sure there'll be a couple Clark W. Griswold meltdowns on my end.
I was gonna say
I've seen the biggest ball of popcorn.
I've seen some other movies that might be a little bit darker that I'm thinking of.
What's that one where Jack Nicholson gets stuck in the hotel? What's that one?
The Shining. Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking of.
Right.
For sure.
Listen, I learned a long time ago. I am not staying in a hotel room anymore I'm staying in a VRBO. I need some space. I need time away. I need some quiet time on my own vacation. So I can't do closed quarters anymore. I just can't do it.
Oh, that's why I just don't bring family on vacation. That's the best way to do it.
Well, try to talk to my wife. She's all about being the mom of the year and taking care of the kids, and the kids are important. Blah blah blah.
I suppose.
Also, I'm not allowed to cuss because we got a freaking swear jar upstairs, and the kids are listening. So I'm not allowed to cuss. So it's going to be rough.
All right. Well, that's good. I'm excited to talk to our guest, a friend of ours, who I think is probably going to bait you into swearing as much as possible.
I'm sure.
So if you could go ahead and introduce our guest for this evening.
You bet. Well, I'm sure everybody knows who he is. He's prevalent on Cyclone Twitter, part of the Tailgate Society, and a good personal friend of Tim and I's, Travis Halm. Travis, thanks for coming on Old Man Strength with us.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a long time coming. I think you and I first met, obviously, on Twitter a couple years ago, and then did not realize that you were part of Tailgate Society when I joined, and then we kind of reconnected there. So my introduction was terrible, which it usually is on this podcast. So why don't you fill in the I thought I'd beat Tim to the punch and making fun of me. And why don't you fill the listeners in on a little bit more about who you are?
So, yeah, I grew up in central Iowa. I think you guys are in a fairly similar spot with that. Yeah, no, I went to Iowa State in 2008, 2012. Yeah, big sports fan, obviously, I think, as you guys know. But no, I've had a really fortunate time to kind of meet a lot of people via social media, as most in our generation have. And I've kind of been able to carve out a niche for myself on there. It's pretty rare, I guess, to see a gay Iowa State fan who, I'm as loud as I can be on both topics. So I think that's kind of why you brought me on here today.
Well, I didn't want to pigeonhole you being Pride Month and things like that, but
yeah, I know. I can't believe you labeled him as an Iowa State fan right away, Chris. That was just out of line.
I know, right?
There's worse things to call me. Trust me. There's plenty worse.
That's true. We'll get to that's later in the pod.
That's true. No, but Travis, you're somebody that like Chris has said, that we've known you through your social media presence, but getting to hang out with you in person, getting to know you in person, and you've introduced me to so many other people. Why are you so good at just kind of social media relationships?
I don't know how to shut up. I think that's the first thing. My family always tells me that my grandma was super sociable, so she was a lady who in the 1940s went to business college after growing up on an Iowa farm that didn't even have running water, and then only to outdo that, she went to war. So we've kind of had a family where we meet a lot of people, we go a lot of places, and we don't really shut up. Our goal is, and she was the nicest lady ever. I still need to uphold that end of the deal, because sometimes I get a little more heated per se. But we have a family where we don't really follow the status quo. Never have, despite being so deeply kind of entrenched in that small town Iowa ecosystem. She was someone who worked her whole life despite having 5 children, and then on my dad's side we had I had 2 grandparents who both worked full time, bucked a lot of trends. They were both art teachers, went to college, so we've always kind of been a little bit against the grain, maybe, for the kind of the environments that we were in. So my rendition of that, and in the mid 2010s and now 2020s, is kind of having that kind of a presence on social media.
So not shy. No, I had never heard the story about your grandma though. So she went to business school and then she went to war.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so usually, like I said, when you're when you're a farm girl in those times, you don't really do those things. But yeah, so she went to San Francisco with the waves, and she was processing soldiers who went off into the Pacific Theater.
Oh wow.
So
that's kind of incredible. No, so my mom was she's the third in her family, so third out of 4 kids, but she was the first one. Her older brother eventually went to school after the war, and he got his business degree and his law degree and whatever. But she was the first one out of her family to go, and she grew up in a very teeny tiny town in northern Iowa, 240 people. I don't know what her graduating class was. It wasn't very big. I'm sure she was one of like 6 students to go to college whatsoever. You're right. That small town idea and that farming community idea back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s was just not a thing. And so I think I certainly learned a little bit more of my audacity because of watching my folks and what they did. My dad, I think, was probably the first in his. He was the third in his family, one of 8 to go off to college. But for me, it was never a thought otherwise. Like I grew up just knowing I was going to go to college, but I don't know anyone of like your grandma's generation that wasn't a thing.
Yeah. So, but in general, I kind of bring that up just mostly because, bucking trends and kind of not falling into that just small town mentality of keeping things as they are. I think that's kind of the main message there, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, being on social media and getting to know you through that, I would say that you are involved in a lot of different Twitter spaces, let's say. So obviously, Cyclone Sports. You're a big fan of college baseball, Texas A&M. I don't know that there's been times that I felt like you didn't necessarily have a true home. You were kind of cheating on the other schools sometimes. And then, of course, your passion about city planning. Yeah, I'll in any day I will see a tweet from you about city planning, college baseball, Cyclone Sports, obviously the LGBTQ community and how important that is. Where do your loyalties lie? What you just have such a wide gamut of things that you talk about. What are you most passionate about?
I think the whole. I think it's good to just have a well-rounded life in general. And so I don't live my life in one of those circles. So my Twitter account doesn't, and I've dabbled in having a professional Twitter account where I just pretend that everything's great in the space that I'm in, and I'm incredibly politically correct there. And I, follow the company line there, and, it is what it is, but that's not really who I am either. So I think, Chris, what I would say is my Twitter account is just an accurate reflection of me. When I'm a drunken mess on a Saturday night, my Twitter account reflects a drunken mess. When I'm being incredibly thoughtful, having a good work day, my Twitter account might just reflect that for once. I would guess that the latter is seen a little more, but it's. I think it's just a reminder that no one wears one pair of shoes. We all kind of,
No, I would certainly during the pandemic, we had plenty of group Zoom calls with any number of people where the former was probably a lot more reflective of what was going on.
But those drunken Saturday nights.
Yeah,
I mean, they were drunk on Tuesdays too, if you want me to be honest.
There were. If you look back through like Trav and I, like our interactions, both like because we were interacting on Twitter while on Zoom in the summer of 2020. I think you would find some things that were entertaining to say the least.
Yeah, those were good times. It taught me that I didn't have to necessarily be going everywhere and still having fun. Nothing beats real human interaction, but those Zoom calls really did kind of get us through that year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
joined
you,
a little late there. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was gonna say the nice thing too is that Travis introduced me to a lot of people that I wouldn't have probably had any other reason to interact with, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of expand that Twitter sphere, that whole universe of people. Because I don't know that I would be friends with someone that went to Texas A&M otherwise. And ironically, that was the weirdest thing. Is one of the friends you introduced me to from Texas A&M is a friend of one of mine up here in Minneapolis as well, or at least a Twitter friend. The world got a lot smaller when we were all hidden, frankly.
So, sometimes, I mean, the world's always been that small. I think some of it too is just, some of it too is just putting yourself out there socially, and usually there's a little liquid courage in there too. I think we're not fooling anybody there. I think when we were hanging out in Minnesota, what was that, 2 summers ago at a baseball game? I think we had 4 states represented in a group of 5. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was good. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. I don't know that I even made it to that many Twins games last year. I still haven't been to a Twins game this year, but that one was probably one of my more fun nights. Not just at the Twins game, but after as well. And
yeah, I think we went to
it was a very good time.
We went to I don't know what you call it, a gay towny bar in Loring Park in Minneapolis. What was that place called?
What is that place called? We played pool. What is that place called? Why can't I even remember this?
Yeah, because I've really struggled to find a good gay bar in Omaha because they're all more dancing, and I just don't have moves. So I prefer the towny bar vibe, and this place hit it hit that perfectly.
The best thing about this too is that so it's the middle of the pandemic. And during the middle of the pandemic, no one was taking cash. But this was such a dive bar that they only took cash. If you tried to pay with a card, they were like, no, we don't do cards. But it was the middle of a pandemic. But I mean, so that neighborhood in Loring Park is absolutely kind of, quote unquote, a historically, traditionally, LGBTQ neighborhood that
you can call it
they've developed. A gayborhood, I like that. Yeah, but it's become like such that you can actually literally establish these dive bars that have been around for 20, 30 years that don't have to follow a straight person's idea of what a gay bar should be, right?
Yeah.
They're just a bar that just happens to be predominantly patronized by gay people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was called 19 bar, by the way. I just looked it up.
Oh, that was 19. You're right. Yeah. Okay. But so you're saying Omaha doesn't have anything like that, really?
No, not really. It's like it's more of a club scene, which isn't really my scene. So that's kind of an issue that I deal with here. When you're in a city that maybe doesn't have as prevalent of a gay community, it seems like the establishments cater to what the predominant, I guess maybe what the predominant impression of gay people is, and and there's certain areas where I just don't really fit that. So, that was definitely a fun time for sure.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was like we got to play pool and have some drinks, and it was a good time. But yeah, I suppose a state like Nebraska, and not that Iowa's any better, but a state like Nebraska necessarily has not necessarily been as friendly to the gay community as maybe some other states have been.
No, I mean it's a lot better than it was 20 years ago. I think so. And where I sit right now, I'm sitting in Iowa in my home, and then literally a mile behind my back is the Nebraska-Iowa border. So unlike Sarah Palin, I can actually see a different jurisdiction from my mom. But
How often have you used that joke?
I think they just made that up just now. But no, so it's a mixed bag because I feel like right now, I think the polling right now is that 70% of Americans support gay marriage. I think some of that 70% has religious inhibitions against it, but they're smart enough to realize, okay, we need to separate church and state. So I think that's a line that's been drawn that I'm okay with. It's been, for a long time there was people. My religion says that gay marriage is bad, so therefore we shouldn't have it in America. It's like time out, folks. That's separate church and state here. But I do think that for one, more people in America are proponents of it. But then also, I think the rest of those religious people who might have issues with it personally are smart enough or are open enough to realize, oh wait, my religion shouldn't dictate law. So overall, I think things have gotten better, even in Iowa and Nebraska. That being said, it's hard to say things are better in Iowa and Nebraska versus saying things are better in Omaha and Des Moines, or Omaha and Lincoln and Des Moines and Ames and Iowa City and things like that. I don't know if I'd feel safe if I lived, in a lot of small towns, especially in like northwestern Iowa, for instance, or just anywhere around Nebraska. Especially if I was like actually in an open relationship, which right now I'm not. So, but I do think that maybe my attitude on the things have gotten better, at least on the G part of LGBT. I think it's gotten better, at least in urban areas for sure. You still have it's never going to be perfect, but I would say that at least in the urban areas, especially 50K and above, I do think that in our two states, I guess I should say my two states, it has gotten better. But the thing with progress is it's a constant race that you're always going to be racing. There's never going to be a finish line. There's always going to be hills. There's always going to be valleys. It just and so right now things are good for the gay community, or they're fine. But what I've discovered is that a lot of the things that I heard in like 2002 and 2005 and 2008 that was used against gay people, those are the same excuses now that are used to justify
the trans hate,
discrimination against the trans community. Which I'm just like, okay, time out, folks. Like, I heard that I was a locker room liability in 2002. Now, granted, I was in the closet until 2018, but I'd always hear, "Oh, we can't have gay people in locker rooms because they might be looking at, someone's junk." And it's just like, no, I had 2 minutes to get changed after gym class before I got math, and I hated math. So no, I wasn't worried about your junk, and so those are kind of the same.
I was gonna say that the guys waving their dick around in the locker room weren't the gay, like it was like literally just like this super macho thing going on anyway. But, so
yeah, and so those days are over for me. But so I get really angry now when I see those exact same talking points being used against another community. So that's kind of where I've had to pivot in the last couple of years, and I don't want to get too far all over the place, but like I have two trans cousins who, one was an absolute pioneer in both realms. Came out of the closet as a gay man in '94 in Marshalltown, Iowa. So obviously, a lot earlier in his life than me. But then also just in a time that was just not friendly to that whatsoever. And
Right.
then later, more, I guess, firmly or more openly identified as trans, which is where she wanted to be ultimately.
Mhm.
So seeing just kind of what she's gone through really has been angering me lately, and it's really been a reminder that um, while I've been able to see a lot of good things happen in the last 5 years of my out experience, um, I know that the things that I've heard said about me have been said to trans people and are still being actively waged, like in a war, and almost in a warlike political way against them. But I also see that the way laws are written, some people are still really pissed off about gay people being happy and able to live their lives. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that laws and bills are being written. Um, they're being written vaguely enough, and they're using all four letters. So we are kind of going back in
I
some
was gonna
way.
say there's a little bit of a regressive tendency to some of
Yeah,
these things,
Florida,
right?
Iowa. Unfortunately, it's a blue red thing, and
Yeah.
there's a few outlying red states where I think that there are sensible enough governors to realize, oh, I'm not going to do this. But no, I mean, Iowa and Florida in particular are the two of the bad ones. Somehow Nebraska has managed to not be as awful as Iowa, and I
I,
still don't understand how that's happened, but I'm sure
I
they'll
think because
follow.
half of them aren't paying attention to what's going on. Like, I mean, hey, in Minnesota, we passed legal weed because our conservative Congress people didn't even read the bill. So I can imagine that some of those things are going on there as well.
Yeah.
But no, no, that's interesting. That the attack that you already feel an obligation to be an ally. Uh, like it's a very weird space to be in, right? Like, I'm a straight white male. I'm gonna be an ally to anything I possibly can, but I'm never having to defend. No one is ever asking me to defend straight white males. Like you in your journey have already come to a point where you feel comfortable enough to now feel an ally for a different group. Like everyone gets lumped together, but really you're being an ally for a different group of the way people identify themselves.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Probably because you have more empathy, but also just because, uh, man, it's just fucked up. Like I'm gonna swear. Like Chris put $1 in the jar for me.
Swear
It's
jar.
fucked up. Yeah.
So it kind of came. It was interesting for me how I got to this point because in 2019 I was working on a neighborhood project in Omaha, um, in a primarily red line neighborhood from 1900 until the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1968. I can't remember if it's 67 or 68, but um, so things are bad have been bad and still are for some sections of the LGBT community. But I think the moment where I truly learned that my space was to always walk a mile in someone else's shoes was in 2019 working on a neighborhood project in North Omaha, which is a predominantly black neighborhood, which was which if you're not familiar with the term of redlining, it's basically people of color were only able to get mortgages in certain areas of town. Well, our poverty maps in Omaha still pretty much directly correlate with that redlining map from 100 years ago. So naturally, massive disinvestment, slumlords, kids not able to get out of poverty, stuff like that. So that was where I kind of learned how to. That's where I got my social advocacy streak started.
Hmm.
I had seen myself finally in a vulnerable position and accepted my vulnerable position because obviously for 15 years I ignored it. But as soon as you accept that vulnerable spot, you start to notice other people who are getting the shaft.
Yeah.
And as soon as that kind of that switch turns in your head, whether you're whether you're from like on a perch or whether you're not affected or whether you're in that spot, you're just not able to unsee that anymore. And um, so at that point, so in 2019, that was really a turning point for me, because so for then it was with people of color, um, low income individuals, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
like
so that's
because like you and I have talked about how like
yeah,
I-94 through Minneapolis
yeah.
was one of the more like criminally
Mhm.
socioeconomic and racist like things. Like
Yes.
a federally funded interstate went through and literally bisected neighborhoods by
Yeah.
haves and have-nots.
Yeah, and so being able to understand that 2019. So keep in mind, I'm saying the years as a timeline for that reason. 2020 hits. We have the coronavirus pandemic that is indirectly affecting just people, certain populations a lot more than others. And because a year earlier I had been working on this neighborhood plan, and my small town brain just kind of exploded, I saw that community getting, once again, they were, their death rates of COVID were higher. The George Floyd murder happened, and then it was also coming out that like murders of Black trans people were skyrocketing. Which I think that murder rate was always high, but I think what was finally happening was those were actually being reported.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then the country goes through the basically kind of that uprising, which was probably long overdue, if we're being really honest. So then 2021, 2022 comes around, and I started reconnecting with a cousin of mine who I had honestly really not known, who's trans, really has been a pioneer in that world. And I realized that I just kind of had to keep that ball rolling of being that loud advocate in whatever spaces I occupy. So I guess, as you guys know me, the spaces I occupy are Omaha, Nebraska, Central Iowa, Cyclone Twitter, and then kind of in my professional life. So, I think I've fit all of the check boxes for, as the right would like to say, as being a part of a member of the woke mob. But I guess I'm a proud founding member of the woke mob in my in all the spaces I occupy, because at the end of the day, I'm standing up for the little guy here,
Yeah.
And I truly believe that even the people who've been against me as a gay person, I think deep down they're trying to look out for the little guy too, and that's always the connection I try to make. Because at the end of the day, we're all getting the shaft in some way, and it eventually, if you're watching someone get put in a situation they don't deserve, eventually you're going to be put in that too, and you're going to remember the time that you saw that happen to someone else and you did nothing, and then. Can you really? I mean, can you really get mad at other people who don't? Probably not. So,
right.
But so it's just one of those things where, especially over the last 6 years, as our society has learned to show more empathy and to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, I definitely have too. But I think, fortunately, I was able to kind of go through my coming out process in 2018 before there was a true reckoning for multiple communities in our society, which just as my coming out was way overdue, that uprising and that reckoning point in America was also well overdue. So the fact that those two things kind of happened, quite quickly after each other, and kind of in this line of, kind of in this timeline here, it's been pretty, it's been beneficial for me, because it's really opened my eyes here too.
Travis,
go ahead, Chris.
I've been pretty prevalent on Twitter with my son's story, and have been pretty open about it, especially more and more lately as I see the attack on that lifestyle and things like that. But I think you and I connected kind of on the same level. I think you and I had a couple conversations about religion and gay rights, and you had spoke about people kind of seeing the way and things like that. And I'm going to share this real quick because it's a former guest that we had. Tim, I don't know if you saw John Miller's tweet that he had sent out where he said, 15 years ago, I was emailing my pastor disagreeing with the church's stance on ordaining gay pastors was a straight up homophobe. Today, I'm proudly marching in the KC Pride Parade. And I'm just wondering, Travis, you spoke a little bit about religion and people holding that on and things like that. You and I have had conversations. I've been very open. I'm a practicing Catholic. I have a personal relationship with my Catholic faith, but I will be the first one to tell you that I don't agree with every single thing that the Catholic Church as a whole and as a religion wants to teach. Because I believe that Jesus gave me a mind to be able to think for myself, not follow the lemmings. So,
Yeah.
and I've always said, I just don't believe in a God that is not going to let somebody go into heaven just because they may happen to love another man or another woman. I just don't buy that. So I know you've struggled with that a little bit, but have you, being such an advocate, seen people that are close to you turn and maybe change the way they feel about that?
Well, so I'm glad that you mentioned the John Miller tweet without even me mentioning him beforehand. So I genuinely despised him as a radio host in Central Iowa.
He himself will say he was an asshole.
He was well. First of all, he was Hawkeye, so it's like whatever. Right. I'm supposed to hate him, but no. I mean, it was him and Steve Dace on this right wing plank.
Yeah.
In Central Iowa. So to see at least one of them have a transformation where they're actually willing to walk a mile, like I said, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, show empathy, not and just understand that maybe they don't know everything, you know. Guys like Steve Dace, I truly think that we're bullied as a kid, and I think that he's just been on a vendetta ever since to bully as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Steve Dace, we don't need to talk about him anymore, but that's just.
Yeah,
to see that John has made this transition, you know, I think those two are kind of the perfect example of one realizes, oh, I was very wrong here, you know, and then another who has just put his heel down and, you know, but also there's a reason why he's on Blaze TV subscription service only.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, you know, John Miller's been able to move on and do much bigger, better things. But to see,
I think John learned to eat crow a lot.
I guess I've been able to see progress in a lot of people, including my dad, on the issue, and I think there's a fine line here because you can be the loud advocate who screams all the time, but usually you can get toned out. So you have to remember not to scream too loudly or come across as too erratic. It's the slow and steady winning of the race, and it's being able to have the conversations and be the good person that you are that eventually does turn people like a John Miller, because he'll realize, oh, you're still the same person, you know. And I don't have a personal relationship with John Miller, but I have plenty of John Millers in my life, you know.
Yeah.
And no, it's. I saw a T-shirt once, and for as much as I want radical change right away, I realized it's not how it works. It said rugged. I think it said rugged and incrementalism, or maybe it was it said something to that effect. But basically, I hate that progress is so slow, but that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes winning the hearts and minds of one person over each day and changing. You know, if you're a good person and can change the hearts and minds of one person a day, that's 365 a year. You know, over time, over 5 years, that's a lot. You know, but I also think that I do think that, you know, people like John Miller, for instance, him and Chris Williams did a podcast probably 2 years ago. That was probably one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. How, because of their religious faiths, eventually a light bulb went off in their head.
Yeah.
Whereas, I might need to practice what I preach instead of treating this like a country club.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was really phenomenal. I hope, and maybe you could share that after this, but I think everyone.
Yeah, we can. That was a good one. He came on a couple months before that on ours.
Yeah.
And told the story of him bringing in some kids, some foster kids, and that had really opened up his eyes to realizing that not everybody gets the same chance at life that maybe his own kids got. and realizing that there are other problems and other issues that are at play, and having a little bit more compassion. I think really opened his eyes. So I even commented to John yesterday, his voice is important because people like him with a loud microphone have the ability to show others that it can be done. So
Yeah, like one thing that I've always said is I didn't graduate with a gay classmate at my 10-year reunion, which I didn't go to. But I know at my 10-year reunion, I had several gay classmates, right? Like the idea that slowly but surely people are realizing that, particularly like growing up in a conservative Midwestern Iowa town, nobody's gay. Well, no, it's not that nobody's gay. Nobody's openly gay.
right.
When they get away, they go to school, they go to a different city, they go to whatever. They're finally out there, and what you realize is, Jason, Steve, Pete, whatever. Yeah, you know what? They didn't get gay in college. They were gay the entire time. They finally came out and were honest with themselves. And guess what? When they come back to visit, they're still Jason or Steve or Pete. They're fine. Like they're it's the same. And I think sometimes in a small town like that, sometimes it sucks to say this, but it needs some sort of like humanization to realize that like it's very ezy to dehumanize someone from a distance.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Especially if they leave. Because I think some of it too is that I think there's some disdain in rural America for anyone who leaves for the big bad city, the big bad city full of culture and full of gay people and full of diversity and full of
Travis,
opportunities.
Do you know how much crime there is up in Minneapolis? I'm told by everyone who doesn't live in Minneapolis how much I should be afraid.
Sam, I was just up in Minneapolis and I was just shedding bullets the entire time.
I know, weren't you? Wasn't it just so scary? Like it's so scary up here. I can't believe I live here.
Yeah.
Picking up your sarcasm, it's pretty heavy.
Everyone who lives in Buffalo was very afraid for Travis, for sure.
Yeah, so I think there's some resentment there too. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you can't be happy in a space, you got to leave it. So, and unfortunately, I've done that, and I've been able to dabble back in it since. But one thing I've noticed though is that as I continue to live my life and do the things that I love to do, even though I haven't even gotten into a relationship yet, is people back home have been able to know that I'm still the same, sometimes nice, sometimes smart ass Travis. They notice that I'm open to what they have to say, and they know that, and quite frankly, they know that I still support my parents quite well.
Sure.
I think that speaks volumes to them in their language.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a very difficult. I had a very difficult coming out, but I've had 3 or 4 situations since where I was the first person to rush home. There was a tornado in Marshalltown, the derecho hit, and we've had a couple medical situations in my family where, I think it, and I didn't do this to show up anybody. I did it because it was, it was just the right thing to do. I would have been, I guess I would have been sick to my stomach if I hadn't, but I was the first person to rush home in all those situations, and so, I mean, it could be really easy for me to come home and just shit on small town Iowa for being short-sighted or being small-minded or whatever. But they're still my home. They always will be. And one thing I've discovered is that me being me means that they at least become open and receptive to me, even if it's not on the gay thing or the liberal thing. I'm still there, Travis. And I think that is how you slowly can chip away, incrementally and make at least some progress. I don't think that's the goal everywhere, because we need strong, robust change nationwide. But in that space, I think that does a lot of good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break and grab a word from our sponsor. I want to get back into that, though, because I want to understand a little bit more about what it means to just remind everyone that you are you, regardless.
Mhm.
In a community that has these weird preconceived notions. So we'll get into that. We're gonna take a break. We'll grab a word from our sponsor. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
Welcome back. I appreciate that word from our sponsor at Revelton Distilling Company. Travis, I think one of the things that I have struggled with even today on this pod is that I don't want to make this anything other than just talking to someone that I know and love very much. But I do think it is important, I think, to be able to talk about what that message looks like, and particularly because we are in, like you said, an era where our trans friends are under attack, and that the language that is written in laws, particularly like you said in Iowa and Florida, is vague enough to be very regressive.
Mhm.
And like it was hard enough for me to come out as not Republican to my family. Like, I can't even imagine what you have gone through. But I guess I would say you've gone through um, a unique journey of coming out later in life, and in probably a time where it was more safe to come out, frankly, but it still took a while to come out, right? What did that journey look like, I guess, for you, and uh, where do you feel like you learned a lot through that process?
I think what we'd want to do is we want to probably go back, I guess, to the beginning. I probably knew when I was 14 or so. There were
Okay.
probably signs earlier. But like I said, based on where I grew up, growing up in an environment where you'd hear some just very nasty homophobic things
Yeah.
And just innately thinking that it was wrong,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever heard the phrase internalized homophobia. When you're in the
Yeah.
closet,
Oh, for sure.
when you're in the closet for 14 years, you start to really hate that part of yourself.
You hate yourself, yeah.
And it starts to show in other areas. Like I think I was talking to my dad once about when I was in school and stuff, and he noticed certain dips in my grades even. And
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that kind of correlates. But it's so like all through high school, I just kind of ignored it, hid it, And I think too, I probably had a much more flamboyant personality at 14, but then 15, 16, 17, I probably mastered hiding it.
Sure.
Like some of that, some of my personality now, I've actually had the question, how much of my personality now is that facade I built at age 15, 16, 17 versus how much of that is me now?
Sure.
I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but my guess is that if that was a facade I had on for 15 years, I'm not going to change it tomorrow either.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
Well,
going to
well,
do it. I'm going to do it.
I'd also, I would also argue that, like, the number of athletes on the Iowa State football team that I knew back in the early 2000s that were out of the closet with a certain group, right? Like, personality is not correlated, right? Like, I think people need to understand that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of it though is, I've even had the question: am I so sports? Did I become so sports crazed because I was just trying to seem more not gay?
Yeah.
No, I've had that question before. I mean, I'm not going to suddenly just not become a sports fan anymore because now I'm firmly entrenched, unlike Gene Chizik. But
next year for Pride, we should get a gay coin, a Pride coin, just like the Gene Chizik coin that they
hey,
gave
Tim,
back in the
we're
day.
trying to bring the community forward, not take it back.
Tim's not wanting you dressed with a bunch of flair and
you can celebrate 5 and 19, but the gay community cannot go 5 and 19. Bringing in Jim Chizik with homophobia, like, thanks, Tim.
Oh man,
you're the one who brought up firmly entrenched.
Yeah,
we are devolving here on this podcast. The Travis Halm effect. God. Anyway, no, but I'm so like I said, I'm firmly entrenched in kind of this this life I'm in, and I like it. But I do wonder if I would have gotten here had I been out at 14. I've heard that. I've wondered that. But that being said, I guess I wouldn't really trade my life now. Minus the fact that I'm still a single dude who doesn't get to the privilege of like splitting rent and utilities. That's about the only complaint I have in the world right now. But no, so it's so in college I kind of trying to get back on track here. So in college I kind of knew I in college I still thought that maybe something could change. I could still be straight probably. I think by the time 2012 hit, I think I was like, okay, this ain't changing. But like I said, that's 2012. I came out in 2018, so that's still 6 more years.
Yeah.
So, but in 2012, in my fraternity, we started to have openly gay younger members in our house, and that's actually one. That might have been the first environment where I saw change happen somewhat quickly. It was and now I still love my fraternity experience. It's the reason I'm able to communicate today, Tim. So like the when you talk about my ability to socialize, it was that experience that kind of unlocked that in my head, that my grandma's social gene, that was probably the best 4 years of my life, in terms of my growth, just in a lot of other ways, not so much in terms of coming to be more my true self, but in terms of just not being a kid anymore. I will
defend to this day that the Greek system has done at Iowa State has done a better job of embracing brothers coming out than even like the dorm system has. Like for such a bro culture for so long, right? It was bro culture when I was there in the 90s, and like they've done a really good job, because when you say bro culture, the first part is brother, and supporting people, and that's where it's been like weird to me. Like I didn't expect it, but like it's actually come around fairly well.
And just seeing in my own house, seeing it going from kind of homophobic in 2009 to having multiple open brothers who were accepted for it in 2012.
Yeah,
that was a 4-year stretch. That was a very, very Well, that was the first time. Yeah, like I said, I saw it in a space of my own.
Yep.
Progress being made. You know.
Yeah.
So then I moved to an even more conservative part of the country in Texas. I was down in College Station at Texas A&M for a while. And to be honest, so I was in College Station in 2015 when the Obergefell ruling came down.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was based upon my experience or based on where it was geographically. I was shocked. I never would have imagined. But I also just didn't think I'd ever get married. So it was like, whatever. If I'm being really honest, everyone's like, "Oh my God, where were you when the Obergefell ruling went?" I was like, "I was probably at work, and I probably didn't even think about it. I probably went home and watched Sports Center. I don't know. You know,
No, it has nothing to do with my sexual orientation. It's that I'm unlovable, entirely unlovable.
So yeah, and so it really was. So then 2016, 2017 comes around. You know, we all know what happened there. And I'm not going to say that the election led me to coming out, the 2016 election.
Yeah.
But it did not lead me to it. You know, it was one of those things where I saw a bunch of regressive ideas suddenly being embraced again. And I'm like,
right.
Oh shoot. And I was in a place that was just firmly. They were firmly entrenched in, you know, and you know, I mean, that was, you know, it's rural Texas, so so I ultimately left. I realized that wasn't going to be the place for me. And now, you know, when you really wanted to just leave regression for a liberal utopia, you go to Omaha, Nebraska, right? But I will say though, Omaha, like, especially in the urban core of it, is very progressive, very accepting. There's a lot of just different types of people. You know, to be honest, it's you know, like most. I knew that I needed to move to at least a city. Now,
Yeah.
I moved to a fairly small one. You know, metro about 1 million people, but
it's got that vibe.
There's enough diversity here where I was kind of able to be me at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was here where I was actually able to, you know, finally come out of the closet, especially to friends, my boss at the time. So,
but yeah, no, it's got that, like Midwestern states have this vibe where, all of these kids that felt like outcasts in their small towns, in their tiny towns in the Midwestern states, go to a city to feel like they can be more likely to encounter people that are like them.
Right. There's a bar in Omaha called Flex, and there's a hotel by there, and there's a lot of people there who have like frequent points at this one hotel because it's near the Omaha gay bar that they like. And they're from Columbus, Nebraska, or Storm Lake, Iowa, you know, and one
Panama, Nebraska, some tiny little town. Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. I think, particularly like in a, like, I can't even imagine like in South Dakota or North Dakota, like you don't, the capital of South Dakota is 16,000 people. It's not even a big city. Like there's nothing to do. Like I think there is something to be said though about urban centers allowing people to like learn a little bit more, to be around more people that are like them.
Oh yeah.
And so which is interesting because like you as a city regional planner, like you literally understand like the role of not just what it does for movement of traffic or what it does for the economic disparity, but also what it does just for like the ability of people to move around in different cultures, to move around and experience all of that.
Yeah. So I guess two lines of thought there. First of all, like when you're talking about cities, find the reddest areas and you'll find the gayest cities nearby. So it's kind of I mean, Atlanta, Georgia, like that city is gay. Like, but then what's it surrounded by? It's surrounded by the most regressive region in our country. I mean, the South is the South is truly unsafe for
Sure.
a lot of people in the LGBT community. I'm generally safe here because I'm not like, I don't present myself as overly, I guess as they would call it, overly gay or overly flamboyant, or, I'm not transgender. So like I can be myself in a state like Tennessee or Alabama. I can be, that's where I can kind of just turn on my fanatical sports crazed self there and be fine. But the like places like that are truly unsafe. So then what do you get as a result? You get Atlanta, where that's probably a top 5 gay city.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, hey, you even look at Louisiana. Like you look at like New Orleans.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of my all-time favorite, like I love bounce music and I love Big Frida, right? And Big Frida could absolutely exist in New Orleans, but you could go to Baton Rouge and already that's an entirely different perspective on all of that. Right. So you're right. Like urban centers do something different. That look at Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Hennepin County and Ramsey County are firmly blue, and that's where the majority of the population lives. And like land doesn't vote, people do. Like I get that, right? Like it seems like a silly trite thing to say, but land doesn't vote, people do.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get 20 miles out of the city and see a Trump 2024 fuck your feelings sign on the front of somebody's farmer's lawn or whatever. Like there is this weird dichotomy of why people are flooding to certain areas and not others, right? So like you have to see that in your role as a city regional planner, that like it's not just economic reasons, and it's not just access to work or commerce or any of those, but there has to be like social reasons why people are flocking to those centers as well. Is that something that like you can see or you calculate or you think about when you're talking about those things?
Yeah, I mean, some people just moved to Omaha because they've got 3 Olive Gardens, but that wasn't my reason. But you do you, folks. There are better places in Omaha.
Well, there are unlimited salad and breadsticks, Travis.
In this economy, that does sell well. No, and like I think one of the reasons why, I kind of go nuts on Twitter about like mass transit and urban spaces, public spaces.
And that's usually when I mute your tweets.
Oh no, that's usually when I dig right in because I love the idea of mass transit. I'm big on mass transit. But that is something I want.
At the end of the day, I think there's just value to when you're commuting to work. There's value to just sitting next to someone who's going to a completely different job than you.
Yeah.
And has a completely different set of problems in their life than yours. There is so much value in that. And and when I was in Europe last fall, just the number of kids who were just out and about playing with each other in the street, like 5 miles from their home. Like there's so much value in that. And I think that I do kind of have a passion with that, because the more and more the kids grow up in kind of a fenced-in backyard, the less likely they're going to be willing or able to be accepting of people who are different than them once they leave their home. I think, I was lucky enough to grow up on a bike every day, with the neighbor kids, get my knees scraped up, all that kind of stuff. And that was probably some of the more formidable times in my childhood, even. Now, so as I've kind of come to fruition in my career, I think it's really important that we build and we create places and we plan for great places that it's not about the place, it's about how the people interact in them. Because I think at the end of the day, it's proven that people are happier, people are more accepting, people are more of a mindset that kind of captures more like creativity and collaboration, and having more like ideas be able to stream through them because they're able to be in these urban spaces that you're talking about, Tim.
Yeah.
And that's why cities are usually more gay friendly.
Yeah.
Because you're just more like, well, first of all, we actually have theaters in cities, and that's kind of been the big that's kind of been the big what do you call it? That's kind of been the safe space for a lot of the gay community.
Oh, for sure,
So,
for sure. I was a theater. I was a theater major at Iowa State. I get that. I think for all of the stereotypes that it is, I think it's just that you're just used to interacting with people that are different than you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and so it becomes a natural, safer space for you to interact, because no one, like in a small town, right? Like where I grew up in a small town, you expect everyone to be just like you.
If you're not in the church
And
choir,
whether you're collaborating on a play or a library project or anything, understanding that someone is coming from a different space, whether that be a person of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, whether it be someone from a different religion than you, like literally at the end of the day, a city increases your likelihood that you are interacting with someone who has a different experience than you. So I get that. Yeah, for sure.
It's, and ultimately that's being in an urban space, like, I always call it the Omaha space inside of 72nd Street.
Yeah.
It's that's, because outside of 72nd Street, it's the suburbs,
Yeah.
It's being in this space is where I finally came out. I mean, it was, a place where, and I was lucky enough to have a place where at work I was encountering people of color. I was encountering for the first time in my career, like even like women in leadership, which that was new to me. Encountering, a workplace in a community where we could actually talk about diversity. We could talk about, like I talked about with my 2018 experience and 2019 experience with, working in a red light community. It's these spaces where I finally learned to walk in other people's shoes, kind of thing. So.
No. Well, I appreciate that. So we have one other sponsored question that we want to get to. I'm going to let Chris go ahead and kick off how we do this.
Okay, so Travis, we're going to ask you the Wintrust Kyle Lehman question of the pod. Kyle Lehman, big Hawkeye fan, so we let him give us our money to tout how great his mortgage company is at Wintrust. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to play his ad, and that'll give you time to think of an answer, okay?
Okay.
So the Wintrust question of the pod is always, you have a magic time machine that can go back 10 years. What piece of advice is 2023 Travis going to go back and tell 2013 Travis? So think about that. Let's play the ad, and then when we come back, we'll get your answer.
Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
Okay, thank you again, Kyle, for all your support. If you do have a mortgage coming up or thinking about refinancing, be sure to give Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage a call. Travis, we asked you before the pod, 2023, Travis has a time machine, goes back in time to 2013. Travis, what piece of advice is he giving him?
The answer is probably just to travel more. I finally got overseas last year in 2022. And I think that would have, I mean, to be honest, me from 2008 to probably 2015, all my travel was sports based, following Iowa State for the most part of the Cardinals. And I think had I traveled more outside of that realm, I probably would have, well, one, it probably would have just provided me more perspective for my career. But in terms of being able to go to places where people like me, who I actually am, was accepted, probably would have alleviated some of the kind of, I guess, what you call internal homophobia or internal self-hate or internal self-grief kind of thing. I've had that thought for a while, actually, especially because, like, I mean, I was just in the Netherlands where, like, there are places where you have to come out as straight. So,
Yeah.
I mean, being able to experience some of that quicker, I think, would have really helped me. I really regret not studying abroad at some point in college. I really do.
I do too. Yeah.
But that's probably it. I regret not buying a house before the pandemic. Does that give you brownie points with your sponsor?
Absolutely, it does. I'm sure.
You see, brownie points with me.
I can't afford a house now, so it's like.
Kyle will tell you different. He'll tell you different. You can afford it. Oh, Travis.
Yeah, and then I'll be able to travel again in 2037.
There you go.
Oh, wow. No, hey, Travis, man, I know we've kind of covered like an entire universe of things. I guess I have one last question for you because I know you were up here recently. When are you going to be up here again so we can go to the Twins game?
I have no idea. You plan something, and I can maybe make it work.
Okay.
Maybe
All right, done. Sold.
So yeah, no. The last 2 Minnesota trips I've done, Tim, were planned within 10 days.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well then,
I'm not exactly. So like, I obviously plan trips ahead when I have to fly, obviously, because I can't afford a flight 7 days prior. But,
sure. Sure.
When it comes to Midwest travel, I'm usually on the fly, like, you know.
Hell, half the time I'll find a tweet and Travis will be in West Des Moines or something already. So he doesn't give anybody any pre-planning.
That's true. No, listener Denny says, "Thank you, Travis. You've been very entertaining and a lot to think about." Which I would echo that sentiment as well. Yeah, for sure.
We do have one more Steph Copley.
Oh, that's right.
Semi-sponsored segment, Travis. I'm sure you've listened before. Steph Copley was on. My favorite part of Steph Copley's episode was when she told Tim to shut the F up, so that she could talk. So we decided to make it a segment. So we encourage everybody to go donate to the Young Women's Resource Center in the name of Old Man Strength and Steph Copley. And then when we come back, Travis, we get to shut the F up, and you get to say whatever you want, and we can't respond at all. So 1 second.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
We even did that and didn't have to go in the swear jar. Okay, Travis, this is your time. You get to say whatever you want, and Tim and I don't get to say a word.
Well, Tim's not even here, so I can't even do my 90-minute planned roast of Tim Johnson.
Sure you can. We'll listen.
No. No, I don't need to tell him to be quiet about anything because I just talk over him anyway. So I think as you guys have realized during this whole podcast, I think the big lesson that I've been trying to learn myself, teach myself, and then as I move forward, um, when it comes to advocating myself, is just teach people to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Um, I even do it. So, I think some people are like, oh, you're not going to walk a mile in the shoes of someone who's religious. I'm like, trust me, I have. I did for 20 years. I think that I think the way that we get out of this rut that our country's in, our society, our world's in, is just by doing that. You got to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. You got to understand what makes them tick. What makes their life hard, what their setbacks are, why certain things in their lives may not be happening. And I think overall that just creates a society of empathy first. I think we have a judgment first society right now, and I think that the way that we'll maybe get our country back on track as an empathy first society, I think that's first. Um, I think that as a result of me coming out of the closet, I began to empathize with so many different communities. Like I said, with popular with racial minority groups, the trans community, women, the disability community. I run a paratransit committee now for my job. I never would have imagined doing that 5 years ago. And so I think that just in general, there are so many things that make life just so ridiculously hard that we don't need people to make it harder. So I think just that's my general message, and just overall is walk a mile in someone's shoes. I think you'll first of all doctors do recommend walking or doing any sort of exercise for 30 minutes a day. But also walk a mile in someone's shoes before you judge them. That's and your cardiologist will thank you too.
I don't know, man. I listened for at least a mile's worth of Nickelback and drink enough Anheuser-Busch, and yet I've got Chris Shipley over there, a Nickelback fan with an Anheuser-Busch hat, and I don't know how to handle all of that.
What's wrong with that?
You don't have to become Chris Shipley. You have to understand.
The world would be a lot better place if a lot of people were a lot more like me. I'm just saying. I'm tolerant as hell. So
that doesn't mean we want to be you.
Sometimes I don't want to be me.
Hey, Travis, I don't know if you want to tell people where they can find you on the social medias, but this is your opportunity to say where they can or can't find you.
Yeah, I'm Travis Clones on Twitter. So that's where you can see most of my pontifications, my rants, my perspective. I don't do it very often, but sometimes I have to put people in their place, which I don't really like doing. But sometimes you got to do it on the Twitter space, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I mean
so that's where I'm at. So yeah, that's in terms of this space. That's basically where I'm found. I get around. So if you follow me on Twitter and I'm in your city, I'll always be open to have a beer and 9 with you. So just as I've done with Tim and I've done with Chris before. Chris, I saw you last time. Last time I saw you was in Las Vegas, so I drank water out of the cup today.
So. My boss
sure you'll be
yeah,
we're tailgating this fall, so we'll hook up at a tailgate, 102.
Yeah,
we'll go steal Brent Curvey's branded ambulance truck that he stole out from underneath me. That's a whole another story. Not that I'm bitter about it or anything.
All right. Well, with that, listener, thank you very much for hanging out with us. This has been another edition of Old Man Strength, brought to you by Three Beards Media, sponsored by Revelton Distilling and Wintrust Mortgage, and broadcasting from the Betfred Sportsbook Studios. I am Tim Johnson, joined by Chris Shipley, our special guest Travis Halm. Chris, anything else you want to add?
We're super busy. I want to give a shout out to the Trice Legacy Foundation's golf tournament this Friday. It is sold out. Georgia was able to sell it out, and they've got some really big prizes. And if you didn't join it and you want to go meet Cy and take the kids to meet Cy, Coldwater Golf Course, 8:00. Cy will be there. Bring the kids, get your picture taken, and I'm just really proud that he was able to sell that out. So
that is awesome. Congrats, George. We are very proud of you. And with that, Chris, Travis, I am Tim, and I will see you guys next time.